Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching another episode of the Crystal Petry Podcast, Season 4. Today on the podcast, I'm talking with Eric Recker, a man who has spent a lifetime chasing the feeling of being good enough. From running and fitness challenges to climbing mountains, Eric has learned that the true victory isn't in proving yourself, it's in being present. Join us as we explore his journey, the lessons from Mount Kilimanjaro, and his philosophy behind win the now. Welcome to the podcast, Eric. How are you?
I am fantastic. Crystal, thanks for having me. I've been super excited about this.
I am too. I am as well, Eric. So, where in the world are you?
I am in a small town of 10,000 people, Pella, Iowa, southeast of Des Moines a little bit.
Okay, excellent. So, can you share a bit about your early experiences when you felt like you were not good enough? How did that shape you?
Yeah, I have what I would probably consider a fairly typical bullying story.
Mhm.
I still live in my hometown, but in the early 80s in Pella, Iowa, the recess kickball field, that was everything.
Yes.
Playing kickball at recess was a big deal. Being
It
picked
still is.
Oh, yeah. Huge deal. It's crazy. I look back at those kickballs and the texture on them and how rough they were. It's a wonder somebody didn't get their cheek ripped off or something with
It's
a kick.
true.
All I wanted to do was be able to play kickball so I could prove to people that I was really good. But it wasn't that I wasn't picked at all last. It was I wasn't picked at all. And so the reasoning for why I wasn't picked was that I wasn't good enough. You can't play. You're not good enough. Okay, fine. You hear that once and whatever. You hear it day after day after day. You start to wonder, is there something true about this? And so it's crazy. This didn't come back to me until probably about 5 years ago. But what I did is, as a second grader, I stood on the sidelines of that recess kickball field and I said, I am going to be so good at everything that I ever do that no one will ever not pick me.
Wow. As a second grader, what are you, like 6?
Yeah, I was
7
like
years old?
8 years old.
At
Yeah.
that age. And that's what you're thinking, that you're going to be so good at everything that people will pick you. So is it fair to say that at 7, 8 years old in the second grade, is that the time that you start feeling like I have to prove myself?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I describe that to people, because I think we all have some version of this, is that on that day and through that process, malware was planted in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of hung out running there in the background and kept poking at me. Oh, that's not good enough. You didn't do good enough. You weren't perfect. You didn't get this done. You're not as good as somebody else. And so unfortunately, that malware defined me for a good portion of my life.
Now, at some point in time, the running and the exercising kicked in. And I feel like a lot of people, they run, they exercise. When did that become a tool to prove that you were good enough, running and exercising?
And see, Crystal, it's wild because when I was in elementary school, I dreaded running. And I mean dreaded. Like we had to run the mile in PE. So when the movie The Green Mile came out about Death Row and all of that, unbelievable movie. But I'm like, that's what I felt like. I wouldn't, even in 4th grade, 5th grade, I wouldn't sleep the night before we ran the mile. It did not ever once cross my mind that I just could have walked the dumb thing. I was scared of running and having to prove myself, all that stuff coming back. So really, I started running when I was in college. It was just kind of a, hey, we're broke, but I need to stay fit. It's free to go to the gym and run around the track. So that's kind of what I did. And then I ran a 5K and I noticed hey, people paid attention that I ran across that finish line. That's kind of a big deal. Maybe if I did longer distances, that would be even a better thing. And then maybe if I decided to start doing triathlon, that would be even a better thing. And it sort of became my identity. I'm a dentist. My patients in my dental practice, the number one question they would have for me is, what race do you have next? And so for about 10 years of my career, that kind of defined me by what the next thing I was doing.
Were you okay with that definition of who you were in your life?
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know a lot about identity. I didn't know a lot about, all this whole world of personal development, self-help, mindset, all that. I didn't know any of that. All I really knew is that if I did this, people noticed, and that was a good thing. And I felt propped up. I felt encouraged. I felt affirmed. And now I realize that those are always big things for me. I like to help other people, but I don't mind hearing a thank you. I don't mind hearing hey, that was awesome that you did that kind of thing. So I kind of got addicted to all of the, wow, you did an Ironman? How far is that? That's incredible. So I got addicted to that validation that people would give me.
So from triathlons and Ironmans to climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, when did that decide to become a part of your identity, or even a thought that this is something that I could do or that I want to do?
Yeah, I got torched on triathlon. It was just too much. So training for long course triathlon, like Ironman distance, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a marathon after all of that. At peak training times, you're doing at least 20 to 24 hours a week of training. That's in addition to my job as being a dentist and running a practice. That's in addition to being a father and a husband. That's in addition to the boards and committees I was serving on. And I just got torched. I just said, you know what, enough of this. The finish line is not worth the sacrifice, even with all the words and all the praise and all of that stuff. So a few years after I got done with that, it was interesting. It's crazy how this happened. Faith is really huge to me, so I know it's a major God thing. But we were having a staff meeting at our office, and I said, hey, let's all share a bucket list thing we want to do. Let's all dream a little bit. What's one thing that you want to accomplish in your lifetime or experience? So I said, I'll go first. I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
So I'd never climbed a mountain before. I'd hiked a little bit, but I thought, you know what, that's a pretty good place to start, right? Then after the meeting, we went back, had our patients, and one of my hygienists approaches me and says, hey, we just had a missions conference at our church this last weekend. And in 6 months, there's a guy who is there who wants to take a team up Kilimanjaro to raise money for the local mission that they're doing in Tanzania, where Mount Kilimanjaro is. Said, well, I am very interested. And so it was such an incredible experience, but I don't think I would have been able to do that without putting myself out there and saying, this is what I want to do. And then someone else gave me the gift of, here's a connection I can make for you.
Yes. So describe to us first, what is the training like to get ready to climb a mountain such as Mount Kilimanjaro? And then what is it like climbing up that mountain? I mean, I know I have, and I'm sure the people that are watching and listening, we watched the documentaries, we've watched Nat Geo, like these things that kind of give you a glimpse into climbing a mountain, but explain to us and describe to us what that was like.
Yeah. So first of all, Mount Kilimanjaro is not Mount Everest. There were no ice faces to climb. There were no forever deep crevasses to cross. it is the highest place in the world that you can walk to. So it's just hiking.
Okay.
And so that was awesome. But what's crazy is Pella, Iowa is around 900 feet above sea level. The top of Kilimanjaro is 19,341. So
wow.
Training here to simulate that was going to be a problem. So I bought a training mask. And what that is it's kind of a neoprene sleeve that goes around your head and clasps in the back. And it's got little ports in the front of it that you can adjust to simulate different altitudes. So I put that mask on and put the ports in that simulated 18,000 feet. That's as much as you could simulate. So basically, you had to breathe hard through that to get enough air into your lungs to be able to keep moving. So I would put that on, and I'd put my hiking boots and my trekking poles and my backpack, and I'd walk around town. I'd walk on gravel roads. I'd walk anywhere that I could and try to do that. I'd wear the mask while I was riding my bike. I'd wear it while I was on the rowing machine. Crystal, I'm an overtrainer. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I wanted to do when I got to that mountain was be ill prepared.
Right.
So basically, once you get to the mountain, it's 5 days up and then 2 days down. So you hike and then you stop and eat and rest. Then you get up in the morning and you do it again and you do it again and you do it again.
Did you have guides with you? I mean, or was the team like the guide helping everyone go up the mountain?
Yeah, great question. The guides and porters, this was not the first time that this group had brought a team up there. Okay. So they realized that the guides and porters there, this is the only way they have to make money. Okay. And so we had an option where we could have a very small team come with us, or we could bless a bigger team and pay more people to help us. So we had 2 guides that hiked along with us the whole time. And then we had porters that set up camp for us and cooked for us and all that kind of stuff. So that was incredible. And so for that week that we were there, for our team of 7 plus a leader, there were about 20 people that were helping us out. And we didn't really need 20 people, but that was 20 jobs that we could help provide for. And that was another way to give back in addition to the money that we raised for the ministry there.
So after the 5 days, I'm assuming it took 5 days to get to the summit.
Yep.
What was your first thought? What did you feel?
At the top of the summit? Yeah, it's cold. It's cold. But what was amazing is when you get up that high and the air is that thin and it's that clear, you can see forever. So we could see the next tallest mountain in Africa, Mount Meru, which is almost 50 miles away. We could see it clearly.
Wow.
And when you're on the top of a mountain, you realize how insignificant you are. Because I think when we're always on the ground, we feel like our problems are really big because they're all around us, right? But it doesn't take getting up in the air very much or getting up above the ground to see how small our problems are and our realities are in the scheme of everything. I'm also a pilot. And when I need a perspective switch, I will go grab the plane and fly. And it's not like getting in a commercial airliner where you're 37,000 feet and you can't see anything on the ground. I'm up 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 feet. So I can see really well. And you see, boy, there's my house, that little dot. And there's my business, that little dot. Wow. Those things are not as big as what I thought they were when they're on the ground. So that's one of the things I love about climbing the mountain is you just get such a different perspective.
Eric, when you make it to the top of the mountain, when you make it to the summit, do you feel like finally I'm good enough? I mean, you've climbed a mountain, and not just any mountain.
Yeah, I will tell you, when I climbed Kilimanjaro, that feeling was not there. Because it's been about 8 years ago that I did that. The feeling still wasn't there, because I hadn't done the work and I hadn't recalled what I said to myself on the playground all those years ago. So I was still chasing the thing that was going to be enough. And so I loved the feeling of being up there, but it wasn't one of those just spread your arms wide, close your eyes and be like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't there. Now, since then, I've learned how to do that and how to truly experience that. But I still was in the broken operating system at that point.
How long do you stay on the summit? So it takes you 5 days to get up there. Once you get up there, how long are you? I don't know if allowed is the proper word, but how long are you allowed to stay up there?
Yeah, so we could have stayed for a while there. Again, different from Everest. You see that people can only be there for a little bit. Part of that is because it's really small, and part of that is because everybody's on oxygen and you have times that you have to get going, get back down. Up there, we could have stayed a while longer if we wanted to. One of the people on our team had some health complications, so we wanted to get him down sooner rather than later. But we were up there for about 20 minutes.
20. I feel like, and I've never climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, but I feel like that's a waste. 5 days, not even thinking about your training, and you can only stay for 20 minutes.
Yep. And what's wild about that is we put so much emphasis on the summits of our lives. So much emphasis on, we got this project, on getting the project done. We can't celebrate it all until it's completely done. We put so much emphasis on that. What if it took 3 years for you to get that project done, and the only thing that matters is the end of the project? What I learned in this is we have to learn to enjoy the 5 days up and the 2 days down as much as we enjoy the summit. Mm-hmm. We just have got to do that, because the summit is such a small part of it. And then we're headed right back down. And once we get back down, we're right on to the other thing.
What are some ways, Eric, that people can enjoy the journey up and enjoy the journey down? What are some ways that they can do that?
Yeah, the biggest way that I found, and the thing that made all the difference to me in my life, was the concept of win the now. And what's been so crucial about that is, for most of my life, I found myself either stuck in the past or worried about the future. And I think most of us, if we're being honest, can say that's where we find ourselves a lot, stuck in the past with the regrets of what we did do or what we didn't do, of the things that happened to us, maybe of the things that we've done inadvertently to other people, the failures we've had, all of those things. The past can be a great informer, and it can be a great opportunity for us to learn. It is a terrible place for us to ruminate. Mm-hmm. And so that's one place we can find ourselves. The other place we find ourselves is worried about the future. And yeah, the world seems to be spinning out of control right now. I completely get it. I understand why people are anxious and concerned. But is there much we can do about that? Or are we just worrying for the sake of worrying? So what Win the Now says is, this moment right here is the most important moment that we have. And in that moment, how can we find wins? So right now, for this hour that we're on this podcast, Crystal, this is it. This is the most important thing in my life. And so what do wins look like during this hour? Wins look like a great conversation between us. Mm-hmm. Wins look like thinking about, wow, I hope this lands with someone who listens to this later. Or I hope this can be an encouragement for someone else. And I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. It's so many opportunities for wins. And then when this is over, I'm going to be moving on to another task that I need to complete. And I have about an hour and a half to work on that. And I'll be focused on that. And I know what the wins are going to look like in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people tell me, oh, yeah, everything. What about when you have a loss? Because life is not all wins. Yeah, we have losses.
That's a great question.
Yeah, we're going to have losses. I might stumble a little bit over my words while we're talking, or something else may happen. Or maybe when I take my phone off Do Not Disturb, something has happened that's going to change the rest of my day. I don't know that. But when a loss happens, we ask one question of it, kind of like the past. What can we learn from it? So if you have a loss, you experience a loss, what can I learn from it? And then you learn that lesson and you move on because there's another now right in front of you. And by doing that and by tracking those wins, it has been life-changing for me. I was naturally a negative person until I learned win the now. And I'm not anymore.
When did you learn the concept win the now? And how did you learn about it?
Yeah, so I was really close to selling my dental practice and walking away because of burnout in late 2020, early 2021. And I actually had an offer in place and I was going to quit dentistry. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was just walking away because I didn't like it. I was burned out. I hadn't done enough work on myself to understand what was all behind this. And so in my office, I have a small room that we built in a storage room. It's just 4x8. And I have a chair and a lamp and an ottoman in there. And I sit in there in quiet when I get some time. And I thought, what is my thing going to be? Because I hoped that someday, once I learned the lessons that I needed to learn, that I would be able to help other people learn the lessons. Mm-hmm. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I sat in there lunchtime after lunchtime after lunchtime, and the word win came to me. It's like, you are so focused on losses, you have to learn how to win. I was like, okay, win today, win the moment, win this, win that. And I looked it all up and it's all saturated and everybody's talking about that. And then I thought, why is win today such a hard thing for me? Mm-hmm. Well, it's because I have so many interactions throughout a day. And it's really hard to say the whole day was a win when there's all these little things. And so I said, how can I articulate this? And win the now popped into my head. I thought, oh, there might be some legs to that. So over several more lunchtimes of thinking about it, journaling about it, writing about it, talking to people about it, I learned that was the philosophy that I wanted to pattern my life after.
Eric, why do you think so many people are just focused on go, focused on climbing up the mountain, climbing down the mountain, that they actually don't take time to enjoy the journey? They don't take time to enjoy going up or the training or what it takes to win the now.
I don't think that most people have taken the time to self-reflect and figure out what's most important to them. We are in a noisy time of history. We can pick up our phones and get lost in videos for the entire day if we want to.
It's true.
There's infinite streaming. There's infinite news. There's infinite whatever. And you can find exactly what you're looking for to support your opinion or your take. It's just a weird time to be alive. And our brains are craving quiet. They're craving it. Think about it. When we used to drive before we had cell phones, if we came to a stoplight, maybe we had music on or the radio on, but we just had to stop at the stoplight. Mm-hmm. and we just had to wait for it to turn green. Or when we went to get groceries before we did the self-checkout and all of that, we just had to wait in line for the groceries.
Yes.
There were maybe the tabloids or maybe some impulse things to buy, but for the most part, you just stood there. Maybe you interacted with somebody else, but your brain was quiet. And we've lost that margin. And I think because we've lost that margin, and because our influences every time, it's right there. So we're not living an introspective life. We're just going hard because everybody else is going hard.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else is going hard and overextending themselves and having all this stuff. So obviously that's what I have to do as well. We've got to short circuit that just rote behavior that we have that looks the same week after week after week, and we don't even know what we're chasing anymore.
So Eric, you're in your office, you're in your quiet place within your office, you're 4x8, and you land on win the now. So right before this point, you are still thinking and feeling that I'm not good enough. Maybe you haven't put words to that yet, but that's your malware, as you described it earlier. How long from the point where you could put words to win the now did you actually have the mental shift and start applying that?
Yeah. So the plan was to have a practice broker come to our office in February of 2021 to finalize the details to get the practice sold. And what happened was on January 18 of 2021, the person who was going to buy my practice from me was in a horrible car accident on his way to work. And it was one of those line in the sand moments where I knew that I wasn't going to be able to escape. He was very fortunate to survive.
Mm-hmm.
The paramedics and EMTs said there's no way he should have survived this accident. But he wasn't able to practice dentistry. Mm-hmm. And so a very busy 3-doc practice became a 2-doc practice, and one of the docs wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. So for about a month, it was survival mode. We were just trying to survive. And once the dust started to settle and we started to move forward, and I was actually able to find a partner to join the practice. So we were back to three docs. And part of the, at that point, once I started talking to the other partner, I started to have a little bit more hope that I was going to be able to move forward. And I said, okay, I want to move forward boldly. So I am going to take the time. I am going to meet with a coach. I am going to meet with a mentor, and I am going to do the work that it takes to become the person that I want to become. I'm going to quit just going week after week after week, hoping that the weekend is going to do something impossible in me. And then it's the next week and we do it over and over and over again. I just decided I was going to do the work.
And if you could put a date to that, and the reason why I'm really, staying in this lane is because I don't want people that are listening and watching you right now to think that on a Monday you landed on win the now, and then on Tuesday everything was great and you are applying the win the now, because that is not how this works.
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that, Crystal, because I think that is a danger that people would think, oh, I'm not like this guy. He just flipped a switch and everything was okay.
Right.
So, yeah, I was in that January, February timeframe that I was starting to get the phrase win the now. Mm-hmm. And I would say before it took until mid-July of 2021. It took about 6 months. And I had a very pivotal conversation with my practice management consultant. Mm-hmm. And I said, Matt, I am really struggling with the false sense of urgency. And the way I describe the false sense of urgency, again, we get these things in our brain that just mess with us. So the false sense of urgency is another piece of malware. There's urgency that's good, right? The stove is hot. I better pull my hand back from it. And then there's urgency that sounds a lot like should. And my dad, I practiced dentistry with my dad for about 15 years. And one of the things that he always said, Eric, don't should on yourself.
We love your dad for saying that.
Yep, it gets messy. And so the false sense of urgency just kept beating me up. It's that voice on Sunday afternoon that says you can't rest because you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. And we get to work at the end of the day on Friday and we're like, we got this wide open green space. It's the weekend. Everything's going to be great. And then the false sense of urgency kicks in and says, you can't sit down. You can't rest. You got a home project to do. You got this to do. You got this to do. And oh, look at all the crappy things that are going to happen next week. And so I sat down immediately after that conversation with him because he goes, dude, you need to write a book on this.
Wow.
And so I sat down that day and spent 2 hours starting to write that book. And at this point, I wasn't seeing patients on Friday mornings. So every Friday morning, I set aside 2 hours to write the book. And it was still a very new concept for me. So I was researching it. And so that book is called The False Sense of Urgency and How to Win the Now. And what's incredible is I wrote that before I fully understood what it meant. And I think I could rewrite it today with a whole lot of other things on there. But I think once we identify that we are struggling so much with the false sense of urgency, and the false sense of urgency pulls us out of the now more than anything else, then we can start to go to work on pulling back from that false sense of urgency, recognizing it, saying that it's a lie, and actually allowing ourselves to rest and recharge a little bit over the weekend, and then be in the moment so that we can show up around the dinner table with our families, so we can show up in our meetings, so we can show up in our conversations with our friends and family. When you're always somewhere else, that's a miserable existence.
And I feel like it's mentally exhausting because you're always going, like your brain is always going. I feel like it's mentally exhausting. So, Eric, how can people train themselves? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like it's a learned behavior. How can people teach themselves or train themselves to win the now, to look at the positives instead of looking at the negatives? And granted, everything in life will not always be positive. We know that. Everyone of a certain age, this at this point in time. But where you can find the positives, where you can win the now, how do you train yourself to see that instead of the negative?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of the things that I'm very blessed to be able to work with my coaching clients on. It's one of the things that's so important that I want people to be able to learn how to do that. So we spend a fair amount of time on this, but kind of the Cliff's Notes 32,000 foot view of it is you start looking at the situations in your life and saying, what would a win look like in this moment? So let's say you're going into a meeting, right? Even a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, which are the worst ones to me. We're going to meet today because we meet on Tuesdays. All right.
You could have sent an email for this, but go ahead.
Exactly. What does a win look like in this meeting? Well, maybe a win looks like I'm dialed in to the meeting, even though I want to be elsewhere. I'm taking notes. I'm well prepared. I'm contributing. I'm calling on other people, depending on what your role is. You just lay out what those wins are beforehand. Just take a couple minutes, think about it. Okay. And then you have lunch. Okay. I got 45 minutes for lunch. What does a win look like at lunch? Instead of maybe just sitting around a table and complaining about your workspace, maybe you get up and go for a walk around the building, or you just go stand in the sunlight for a few minutes, or you sit at your desk and instead of just scrolling endlessly on social media, you close your eyes and just breathe for 5 minutes. How can we take that spot that's often very negative and turn it into a positive? And then at the end of the day, when your spouse, significant other, friend, whoever asks you, how was your day? Start to force yourself to recall the wins from the day. This is not that we ignore the losses. No, we learn from the losses. And then you have a dinner table situation, hopefully, at least a couple times a week. You sit down with your family or whoever you're sitting around there with. What does a win look like? Well, maybe we all silence our phones and we ask good questions and we share life and we encourage each other. Then we get to bedtime. Okay, what does a win look like around our bedtime routine? Maybe we say, I'm not eating anything after 7 o'clock, no matter what. And then we say, I'm not going to have my phone in my hand for 45 minutes before I go to sleep. That means no doom scrolling in bed. That means no falling asleep to Netflix. That means a lot of things. But basically, you're just looking throughout the day. You become like a hunter of wins. So you're like looking for them everywhere. And it will not work if you do that for one day. It will not work if you do it for 2 days. But if you start doing it for a week, and then you start doing it for longer than a week, then it starts to become a mindset, because the story that you tell yourself then is that I am someone who looks for wins.
At this point in your life, Eric, do you still feel like, or are you still thinking that I need to prove myself?
No, I know I am climbing the mountain now. 100%. 100%. But man, Crystal, it took a lot of work. That was a mindset that was so deeply ingrained that I even suppressed it and didn't remember it. And then it came back to me. But no, I don't feel like I'm someone who needs to prove myself anymore. Now, some people my wife might argue with that sometimes, because I still do a lot of endurance challenges. But I'm finding out, again, we talked about that, 5 days up, 2 days down, 20 minutes on the summit. I'm finding how to enjoy the journey.
Excellent.
I'm finding how to enjoy the training, how to enjoy the moments with people, how to block my time so that sometimes are just for relaxation and sometimes are for work. But it all can't be a mixture of I don't know what, because then it becomes that false sense of urgency again.
Eric, as we get ready to wrap up, I have a few more questions for you. For the person or the people that are listening to you and they have realized during the time of this conversation that they are constantly having to prove themselves, they constantly have this sense of urgency. Maybe they couldn't put words to it before, but now they have the language for that. And they want to change, because I feel like that's part of it. You have to want to change that mentality and make this mind shift. What's the first thing they need to do?
Awareness is the first thing. Awareness is always the first thing. And I think being able to raise your hand and tell someone else that you trust that you're struggling with this, I think is a huge thing, because if we keep it in the dark, it stays in the dark and it has power over us. If we declare, even to a journal, get a journal out and say, I'm struggling being present in the moment. I'm struggling with the false sense of urgency. I'm struggling with knowing what to do next. That is always the first step. And then it's being so conscious of, am I in the present moment or am I zoned out? You know, am I here at the dinner table, but I'm thinking about everything that's going to happen at work tomorrow? What can I do about that? Okay, I get a big project at work tomorrow that I'm really thinking about. Okay, block a chunk of time in the evening to work on it. Just tell your family, hey, I need an hour so I can work on this so I can be really present the rest of the time. Or when that urgency just goes crazy over the weekend, say, what are the most important things that I have to get done? Okay, I got to mow the lawn. All right, that takes an hour and a half. All right, I'm going to do that at this time. And then I have to meal plan for the week next week. Okay, I'm going to do that on Sunday at this time. And then you have just these little blocks so you can get those things done that you absolutely need to get done. And then the rest of the time, you can enjoy yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you're constantly letting your mind juggle around all those things but not doing anything about it, that's when you're in trouble.
What is your intention in this space, Eric, of helping people win the now?
My intention is to help as many people show up in the moments of their lives as possible. I'd love to do that from stages. I love to do that with one-on-one coaching. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about this because I have seen how it can change a life, and I continue to see how it changes lives. So yeah, my goal is to have 1 million people learn the concept of Win the Now.
Awesome. Now, as we get ready to wrap up, my final question for you, Eric, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Yeah, a guy that I've met through some endurance events I've done. There's a challenge called 29029, and what it is this organization rents out a ski lift on a mountain, and we climb that same mountain however many times we have to get to 29,000 vertical feet altogether. These are 36-hour challenges. You have 36 hours to complete it. And so one of the other people that I have done one of those with, his name is Matthew Spence, and he wrote a book called Lessons from the Wall based on his 29029 experience. So I think he'd be an amazing guest for your podcast.
Well, you were definitely an amazing guest for this podcast, Eric. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. It's been a lot of fun.
To my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Eric's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts as well as Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.